Night shift at Siltline Refuge used to mean a thinner line and quieter tempers. On Calyx 9, quiet never lasted. The wind kept moving, carrying metallic grit that found every seam and every lung. At Mirage Dewworks, the aero mesh condenser towers rose like thin masts. Their lattice skins drank what little moisture the skies still owed. Jonah Sutter stood in the main control gallery, eyes on the pressure graph crawling across a wall display. He was an infrastructure water engineer. People blamed him when thirst took a human shape. Intake fans pushed a dry hiss through the ducts. He wiped grit from his eyelid and leaned closer to diagnostics. Aero mesh capture efficiency was down. The intake filters flashed amber. Silt seal filter cores were climbing toward overload. A ceiling lamp flickered twice. The grid steadied, then sagged again. Jonah felt the building's faint tremor in his teeth. He pulled up the outer sensor feed and watched dust density climb. The metallic particulate index jumped in a sudden, clean spike. He heard the first distant boom as a low thud through the ground. Another followed, closer. The towers shivered as their stabilizers compensated. Brasswind front, Jonah said, not again. A red warning line crawled across his display, core differential pressure exceeding safe margin. The system suggested one action. Initiate the cut hours. Jonah exhaled slowly. The cut hours were not a switch to him. They were a sentence. If he triggered reduction, the dew queue would turn from impatience to panic in minutes. If he did not, a core could fail. Then everyone would drink whatever slid through the mesh. He keyed the intercom. Water ration office. This is Jonah. I am initiating the cut hours. Reduce distribution to emergency baseline. Priority is the clinic and infant block. Captain Ressa Dane needs crowd control at the cold canteen. A tired voice replied. Understood. People will not like it. They never do, Jonah said, and cut the channel. He activated the pulse gate manifold schedule. Valves in the valve yard answered with a distant chorus of clicks as zones tightened. The main flow meter dipped. The Nightwater ledger, a hardened device bolted beside his console, began logging the new pattern in crisp time stamps. Jonah rested his fingers on its casing, as if he could protect it by touch. Noise rose from below, carried through ventilation shafts, shouts, then someone screaming. People called it the thirst riots when crowds snapped. Jonah had seen it. It was bodies counting down. He grabbed his lungveil mask and sealed it with a practiced press. Then he took the stairs down toward the distribution floor, where the human side of the system waited. The dew queue was no longer a line. It was a compressed mass of bodies outside the cold canteen. Shoulders pressed together, faces gray with dust. Some had proper lungveil masks. Most wore improvised wraps that leaked at the edges. A woman pushed forward, clutching a cup. My mother cannot stand, she shouted. You cut the water again and you want us to watch her die. Jonah lifted his hands. The towers are taking in metal dust. The filters are close to failing. If we do not reduce flow, the water will be unsafe. Another voice snapped back. Unsafe for who? You drink clean. We drink poison. Jonah swallowed. He wanted to say he drank the same ration. He wanted to say he slept with grit in his sheets. Words did not change particulate count. Captain Ressa Dane pushed through with 2 guards. Her helmet was battered, its old insignia scraped off and replaced by nothing. Neutral, by design. She raised a handheld speaker. We are at emergency baseline, she announced. Clinic and infants first. No pushing. Anyone causing harm goes to holding. A man laughed, bitter. Holding behind the valve yard? Your cages? Ressa did not answer. Her silence fed the crowd's anger. And for a moment Jonah felt the pressure shift from him to her. Order in the Drybelt always came with a cost. Jonah's eyes caught a maintenance hatch near the cold canteen wall. The latch had fresh scrape marks. Too clean for random vandalism. Someone had forced it recently, right where a distribution conduit ran. Ressa followed his gaze. You think someone is tampering? I think someone wants panic, Jonah said. Panic makes people beg for a strong hand. Ressa's expression tightened. She signaled her guards to seal the hatch. The crowd surged, shouting that security was hiding theft, hiding favoritism, hiding corpses. Jonah backed away, dust stinging behind his mask. If hands were on valves. Tonight was not only weather and war. Tonight was deliberate. A clinic runner pushed through the crowd, holding an oxy pouch like a signal flare. Her eyes locked on Jonah. "Engineer," she said. "Red Ditch Road. Someone is down in the ditch. No medic can reach them." Ressa Dane's mouth tightened. "If you leave, the line breaks. If I stay, someone dies alone," Jonah said. He slipped into the cold canteen service passage. He grabbed 2 oxy pouches and 1 spare lungveil mask. He took a satchel with a single Cleanwell cartridge from the emergency bin. The cartridge was tagged for the infant block. He tore the tag off anyway and pocketed it. Outside the shelter wall, Red Ditch Road ran like a scar through drifting grit. He found her half buried against the ditch slope. One arm curled under her chest. Her skin tone was not human. Muted ash rose under the dust. A field kit hung at her waist. Its seal cracked. Jonah knelt. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened a fraction. She tried to speak and only coughed. A thin wheeze. He pressed an oxy pouch to her face and opened the flow. The hiss steadied her breathing. He sealed the lungveil mask over her features, then lifted her carefully and carried her back, step by step. At the gate, a ration clerk spotted the Cleanwell cartridge in Jonah's satchel. "That is for infants," the clerk snapped. "It is for a living person," Jonah said, and kept moving. The clerk's voice rose, turning heads in the due queue. "He steals clean water. He chooses favorites." Jonah felt the accusation land like a weight, but he did not stop. At the clinic door, the woman's eyes were clearer now. Her badge plate showed a name. Sayla Rune. "You traded someone else's safety for mine," she rasped. Jonah met her gaze. "I traded time. I do not know who will pay yet." Sayla's grip tightened on his sleeve. "Then keep your ledger safe. If they control the story, your trade becomes a crime." He returned to Mirage Duworks with the noise still clinging to his ears. In the control gallery, the silt seal filter cores held. Barely. The cut hours had bought time. And time on Calyx 9 was always borrowed at interest. A new message blinked on his console, routed through the Drybelt Civil Council channel. A security seal he did not recognize stamped the header. Cade Security Works. Jonah stared at the sender name. Then he opened it. Marshal Joran Cade requests a meeting at Mirage Duworks. Immediate. Security escort authorized. His first instinct was to refuse. His second was to understand that paper was part of the weapon. Before he could reply, footsteps echoed in the outer corridor. Heavy boots. Multiple sets. Disciplined. The gallery doors slid open. Marshal Joran Cade entered with a calm that did not belong in a place built from desperation. He wore a dustcoat cut like a uniform. Seams sealed. Collar clean. A lungveil mask hung unused at his throat. Behind him came 4 Cinder Guard soldiers. Rifles angled down but ready. And a clerk with a tablet hugged to their chest. Cade looked around as if touring a facility he already owned. His gaze lingered on the Nightwater ledger, then settled on Jonah. "Engineer Jonah Sutter," Cade said, "you run the heart of Siltline Refuge. That is an ugly job. I respect ugly jobs." Jonah kept his hands visible. "You have authority to enter Mirage Duworks?" The clerk raised the tablet. "Emergency security mandate. Drybelt Civil Council. Brasswind front escalation. Elevated risk of civil disorder." Cade spoke as if it were obvious. "I am here to prevent disorder. By bringing rifles into a water plant," Jonah said. Cade's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "By keeping people from tearing your towers apart. By keeping your staff alive. By keeping the dew queue from becoming the thirst riots." Jonah held his voice steady. "What do you want?" Cade stepped to the rail and glanced at the pressure graph like someone reading a market chart. "Your cut hours will trigger panic. Panic triggers violence. Violence damages valves, cores, aero mesh skins. Then you will have no water at all. You know this." Jonah did not answer. Cade took the silence as agreement. "I propose a solution," Cade continued. "Cade Security Works will deploy a protective detail to Mirage Duworks and the valve yard. We will secure Filter Vault. We will enforce ration order at the cold canteen. Jonah's chest tightened. And the price? In exchange, Cade said evenly, you grant my office control access to the Pulsegate manifold, and you provide the Nightwater ledger for audit and anti-corruption measures. Jonah stared at him. You want the keys and the only honest record. Cade's eyes remained steady. People are already whispering that someone is stealing water. Someone is tampering with valves. If you let rumors grow, you lose the crowd. If you let me hold the record, the rumors die. If you hold the record, Jonah said, the truth dies. Cade lowered his voice, almost instructive. Engineer, you are thinking like a technician. This is governance. People do not need your numbers. They need to believe someone is in control. Jonah looked at the Nightwater ledger. It held every hardship and every compromise. Every time he stole from one ration block to save another. Without it, he could be painted as anything, and the system would have no memory. He met Cade's eyes. No, I will not give you the ledger. I will not give you the manifold access. Jonah expected anger. He expected theater. Cade did neither. He only nodded once, as if Jonah had confirmed a detail in a report. Very well, Cade said, you are allowed to refuse. That is the luxury of a functioning system. He turned toward the door, then paused. Water will teach you what order means, Cade said calmly. It always does. Then he left, boots fading down the corridor, rifles and paperwork moving with him. Jonah stood alone in the control gallery, staring at the pressure graph as it dipped another fraction. Outside, the wind carried more metal dust toward the aeromesh towers. Below, the dew queue would grow, and the cut hours would stretch longer. He placed his hand on the Nightwater ledger again. The casing was warm from constant use. It felt like a heartbeat. Not while I am still here, he said to the empty room. Metal dust hung over Siltline Refuge all morning, a thin haze that turned sunlight into a dull smear. At Mirage Dewworks, Jonah Sutter watched the pressure curve refuse to stabilize. The cut hours had ended, but the meters still bled. The loss was not inside the aeromesh condenser towers. It was downstream, somewhere after the Pulsegate manifold. Jonah grabbed his handheld kit and ran toward the valve yard. The valve yard sat in an open pit where pipes crossed like ribs. He saw the problem before he reached the rail. A steady mist jet sprayed from a side junction, and the wind stripped it away into the Drybelt. Captain Ressa Dane was already there with 2 guards. She looked from the leak to Jonah. How long until we feel it? She asked. Hours, Jonah said. This is not fatigue. Someone opened a path and tried to hide it. He shut a local isolation wheel, but pressure alarms screamed in his earpiece. Whoever set this up had created a bypass route, a second throat that kept bleeding even when he choked the first. Jonah crouched near the valve cluster and brushed grit away. The sealing compound was fresh, but tool marks cut through it, neat and trained. The actuation bolts showed a torque pattern that did not match water ration office tools. Someone wanted you to find it late, Ressa said. Someone wanted it to look like a desperate mistake, Jonah replied. An engine growled above the pit. Marshal Joran Cade stepped down from an armored truck with Cinderguard in a clean fan behind him. He studied the leak as if it were evidence placed for him. Sabotage, Cade said, from within the dew queue. Desperation always grows teeth. Jonah kept his voice steady. You do not know who did this. Cade held up a slate. Witness reports. People saw strangers near the yard last night. I will secure the system before the next leak becomes a riot. Ressa moved a step forward. Let the engineer isolate it and patch it. Cade nodded without warmth. He will, under protection, and under audit. Cinderguard set a perimeter that pushed everyone back, including Ressa. Jonah tried to reach the junction again, but a rifle barrel appeared in his peripheral vision, not pointed at him, simply placed like a boundary line. Wait for clearance, the guard said. Water does not wait, Jonah replied. Cade's clerk stamped a paper order with the Drybelt Civil Council seal. Filter vault is sealed, the clerk announced. Full lock for investigation. No Cleanwell cartridges leave without authorization. Ressa's eyes flashed. The clinic needs those. Cade answered calmly. The clinic will receive allocations through my office. It prevents theft. By noon, house checks began. Cinder Guard searched rooms in Siltline Refuge, counting oxy pouches and confiscating unregistered lungveil masks. People handed over masks because refusal meant a broken door and a longer line later. At the cold canteen line, Jonah watched a guard take a lungveil mask from an old man who could barely stand. Unverified equipment, the guard said. Orders. My daughter traded her blanket for that, the man whispered. The guard pocketed it anyway. The old man tried to breathe through a cloth wrap, and Jonah heard the cough deepen. Jonah went to Filter Vault and found the door sealed with a red strip and a stamped mark. It looked official enough to end arguments. Which was the point? He returned to Mirage Doworks and swallowed his protest. Anger without proof would only feed Cade's story. In the control gallery, Jonah compared the pulse gate manifold logs to the Nightwater ledger record. A zone gate had opened during a scheduled lock, just long enough to drop pressure and then close again. The timing aligned with a brief power sag, the kind that could reset a local controller if someone wanted it to. He saved the anomaly to a private archive. It was a pattern, not a confession. Selwyn Marr called through the Interline Relief Compact channel. His face appeared against a neutral backdrop, neat and distant. Engineer Sutter, we are hearing reports of unrest. Selwyn said, do not escalate. The Interline Relief Compact cannot be seen as choosing sides. They are sealing supplies and taking masks. Jonah said, people are getting sick. Selwyn's tone stayed even. If we challenge the Drybelt Civil Council publicly, funding collapses, fuel shipments stop, Cleanwell cartridges stop, keep neutral, let Marshal Cade restore stability. We review later. Later is not drinkable, Jonah said. Selwyn leaned closer. Issue a neutral statement. Say the Interline Relief Compact supports safety inspections. Say you cooperate. It buys time. It buys silence, Jonah said. Selwyn paused once, then hardened. If you make accusations without proof, the Neutral Ledger Board will label you an instigator. You will lose what support you have. The call ended. Ressa came to the control gallery after the call, her helmet tucked under one arm. She did not speak loudly, because walls carried sound. Cade is feeding the Drybelt Civil Council a clean narrative, she said. He wants the Neutral Ledger Board to publish it before anyone can question it. Jonah showed her the mismatched gate timing on his private archive. Ressa stared, then shook her head. It scares me, but it will not stop him. She leaned closer. If you push too early, he will label you a threat and lock you out for good. That night, a door sensor in a side corridor tripped and then went quiet. Jonah did not call for guards. Too many guards belonged to someone else now. He found a woman pressed into shadow behind the control gallery, breathing hard through a worn mask. Her coat carried a foreign weave, and a small satchel was strapped tight to her ribs. Engineer Jonah Sutter? She whispered. Who are you? Jonah asked. Irion Voss, she said. Interline liaison. Translator. I carry record sets. They're hunting me for them. Boots passed in the far hall. Slow patrol rhythm. Jonah pulled her into a maintenance alcove that smelled of coolant and old wiring. Who is hunting you? Jonah asked. Cade Security Works, Irion said, and the Neutral Ledger Board that publishes whatever story they're fed. They flagged my access badge as stolen. Then they sent guards to retrieve the evidence. She opened her satchel just enough to show a sealed drive case. Then closed it again. Valve telemetry, patrol routes, time-aligned grid dips. The leak was engineered. It was staged to justify seizures. Jonah felt his fatigue turn into sharp focus. I found a gate opening that should not exist. But I cannot prove intent. You can, if you do not hand them a single byte. Irion said. They isolate one piece, edit context, and turn you into a liar. You need a chain, many small pieces that lock together. She listed them softly. A power sag that matches a patrol loop. A patrol loop that matches a valve opening. A valve opening that matches the pressure drop. A sealed door that matches the day the cartridges vanish. Jonah listened, seeing the outline of a trap and a path through it. He led her up a ladder into the condenser calibration loft. A cramped space above the main gallery. It held aero mesh tension weights, moisture sample jars, and spare sensor casings that no one cared about unless a tower drifted. The loft was dusty, boring, and therefore safe. He pulled a dust-coated flow sensor canister from a shelf and opened it. Inside was a padded cavity, built to protect delicate parts. "This stays here for weeks," Jonah said. "No one looks at it." Irion nodded. "Then it is safer than any pocket." Jonah initiated a partial mirror of the Nightwater ledger onto a hardened micro-module, keeping the original device bolted and visible. When the copy finished, he sealed the module inside the canister and slid it back among the weights. Irion placed her record case beside it, careful and fast. "If they take me," she said, "you still have the evidence." Downstairs, Sayla Rune worked in the clinic under dim lights. Jonah found her between patients, hands gloved, eyes tight with strain. "Metal dust injuries are rising," Sayla said, "not only from the wind. It spikes after the searches." "After they take masks," Jonah said. Sayla nodded. "People sleep without protection. They panic, breathe harder, and pull more dust. Then they come here angry. And the anger spreads. I can treat lungs, but I cannot treat a system that wants them sick." Jonah watched a child cough until their shoulders shook. He heard a parent whisper about aliens bringing disease, and he saw how quickly fear found the nearest target. By morning, portable speakers rolled a new announcement through Siltline Refuge. "Fire safety review at Mirage Dewworks. Power will be cut until further notice. Water distribution reduced for public protection." Jonah reached the control gallery as the lights flickered and died. Backup panels glowed weakly, fans slowed, and the intake hiss became a thin cough. Captain Ressa Dane arrived a minute later. Jaw set. "This is him." "It is paperwork wearing a mask," Jonah said. A Cinder Guard lieutenant entered with 2 soldiers and a clipboard. "Extended cut hours. Priority routing is in effect," he said. "Orders from Marshal Cade." Jonah scanned the priority list. Names and blocks were marked favored or delayed with no explanation. It was rationing shaped like obedience. Outside at the water ration office, a new window opened beside the old one. People who carried Cade's stamped tags were waved through first. They left with full jugs, while the rest of the dew queue watched with dry mouths and harder eyes. At the cold canteen, a man shoved another and hissed, "You signed with him." The other man snapped back, "My kids needed water." Captain Ressa Dane held her guards in a thin line, trying to keep fists from turning into knives. She did not fire. She knew what Cade wanted. A recorded riot and a clean reason for harsher control. Selwyn Marr called again, urgency now visible at the edges of his voice. "Engineer Sutter, sign the interim security cooperation form," Selwyn said. "It unlocks generator support. It restores tower power." Jonah read the clauses. Access to the pulse-gate manifold. Audit authority over the Nightwater ledger. The same noose, pulled tighter. "If I sign, the towers run," Jonah said. "If you do not, people die," Selwyn replied. "Choose the least harm." A scream rose from the line below. Sharp and sudden, Jonah ran down the stairs. A woman had collapsed near the edge of the crowd. Her lips were split. Her skin was gray with dust. Sayla knelt beside her with an oxy pouch pressed to her face, trying to seal it against the wind. "Dehydration," Sayla said, voice tight, "and dust load. Her lungs cannot move enough air." The pouch hissed. The woman's chest rose once, shallow, then failed to rise again. Her eyes fluttered and went still. Silence spread across the dew queue. Even the guards stopped moving for a heartbeat. Someone began to sob, quietly, as if sound itself might draw punishment. Jonah stared at the body on the concrete. He had been trained to think in margins and schedules, to trade one risk against another. None of that explained a death that had been engineered through fear and paper. He stood and faced the nearest guard. "Tell Marshal Cade," Jonah said, voice steady, "I will not sign away the truth to buy power." He looked at Sayla, then at the crowd, and then toward Mirage Dewworks. The fight was no longer about valves and towers. It was about what Siltline Refuge would accept as normal when water became a leash. By midweek, Metal dust had become a second skin on Mirage Dewworks. Jonah Sutter brushed it off a sampling port and watched the particulate index rise anyway. The cut hours had become routine. And routines made people surrender. Sayla Rune met him at the clinic door with a sealed vial. Her gloves were stained pale gray. She was an alien field medic, trained for bad water and worse air. "This is from the cold canteen line," Sayla said. Jonah read the label and sniffed. "It tastes like metal." "It is metal," Sayla replied. "Particles are passing the silt seal filter cores." Jonah felt his stomach tighten. "Those cores are rated for this load." "They were," Sayla said. "They are saturated. They are bleeding through." Inside, cots filled the hall. People lay with tight chests and fevered eyes. A cough moved through the room like a chain reaction. Sayla tapped a chart on her slate. "Respiratory cases are rising, not only from wind. The water is carrying grit into lungs." "How?" Jonah asked. "Steam," Sayla said. "Boiling rations, washing cloth, breathing over cups. It becomes aerosol." She lifted the vial toward the light. "When it dries, it leaves a film. That film gets back into air." Jonah remembered the Cleanwell cartridge he had spent to save Sayla. He remembered the infant block he had shorted. He remembered other small trades that kept one person alive. Sayla lowered her voice. "If the cores are not replaced, this becomes an outbreak." Jonah swallowed. "Filter vault is sealed." Sayla's eyes hardened. "Then open it." A call tone cut through the clinic noise. Selwyn Marr appeared on Jonah's screen, framed by clean office light. "Dr. Sayla Rune," Selwyn said, "we received your note. It is measurable contamination," Sayla said. "I can show the particulate count." Selwyn kept his tone even. "Language matters. If we declare contamination publicly, donors pull away. The Interline Relief Compact cannot be linked to a panic event." "People are already sick," Sayla said. "I need lung veil masks and cartridges." Selwyn looked at Jonah. "Engineer Sutter, issue a neutral update. Say air quality worsened. Say the clinic is monitoring symptoms. Do not use the word contaminated." Jonah felt heat rise under his mask. "If we hide it, more people drink it. If you announce it," Selwyn said, "the neutral ledger board will publish collapse. Marshal Cade will claim broader authority. You will lose what little control remains." Sayla stared at the screen. "You fear a headline more than a lung." Selwyn paused, then hardened. "We fear losing the relief corridor. Choose your words, or you lose everything." The call ended. In the corridor, Jonah watched a guard confiscate a lung veil mask from a teenager. The teenager coughed into bare hands. A mother pulled her child away from the clinic window and whispered, "Alien plague. They brought it." On the outer wall, fresh posters appeared over older ration notices. They carried the seal of the Drybelt Civil Council and a simple warning. "Do not share water with outsiders." A wall speaker crackled to life with Marshal Joran Cade's calm voice. "Citizens of Siltline Refuge," Cade announced. "Some off-world personnel arrived with unknown pathogens. Follow Cinder Guard instructions. Report suspicious clinics and unauthorized supplies." Sayla heard it too. Her shoulders stiffened, but she held her silence. She returned to a patient and tightened an oxy pouch seal with careful hands. That evening, Jonah ran a hidden sample through a bench tester at Mirage Dewworks. The readout matched Sayla's warning. Fine metallic particulate, above safe threshold. He opened the Nightwater ledger and scrolled through the last weeks. Every cut and reroute stared back at him. He saw where he had bought time with someone else's thirst, then called it a plan. Sayla stood in the doorway. "This is not only on you." Jonah kept his eyes on the ledger. "It is on my hands." "Then use your hands again," Sayla said, "for truth, before the truth uses you." Jonah nodded once. He knew truth would draw blood. Before dawn, Red Ditch Road smelled of hot dust and spilled fuel. Jonah walked it with Captain Ressa Dane, keeping to the ditch shadow. Ressa had stayed officially neutral, but her eyes were tired of watching stamps kill people. "They are moving someone," Ressa said. "Cinder Guard escort, not a prisoner from the Duque." Jonah followed her gaze to a convoy shape. "Who?" "A foreign specialist," Ressa said. Malky Terran. Jonah recognized the name from intake lists. Alien soil biologist, microbe engineer, a person who came to fix dead ground. Ressa spoke like she was reading a report she hated. Cade wants her. Selwyn knows. The council signed a transfer order. They reached a bend near a collapsed culvert. Voices echoed ahead. Jonah crouched behind a rusted pipe and watched. 2 Cinder Guard soldiers pushed a figure forward. Her hands were zip-tied. A hard case was strapped to her chest, held close like a shield. "You will sign the land recovery contract," the lead soldier said. "Then you will work for Cade Security Works." "I came to restore soil for everyone," Malky Terran said, "not as property." The soldier struck her across the shoulder. The hard case clacked against her ribs. Jonah glanced at Ressa. She gave a short nod. Acceptance of consequence. Jonah stepped out, palms open. "Stop," Jonah said. "She is under Interline Relief Compact mandate." Ressa stepped into view, her badge visible. "Show me the arrest basis," she said. A Cade Security Works supervisor emerged from the convoy. Crisp coat, clean gloves. "Engineer Sutter," the supervisor said, "you are not authorized here." Jonah ignored him and spoke to Malky. "What is in the case?" Malky tightened her arms around it. "Blueleaf biome case," she said. "Living soil microbes. They can restart dead ground." "It would take years," Jonah said. "It takes stability," Malky replied, "and water that is clean. Every day, not only when it is convenient." She shifted, revealing a small label. "Seedwake packets. They only germinate if the water stays safe," Malky said. "If the water is controlled, the future is controlled." The supervisor stepped closer. "Marshal Cade will ensure proper use. The Drybelt needs order. Order that charges people for soil," Malky said. "Order that ties them to work crews." The supervisor lifted a second document. "Exclusive recovery charter. Taxes for protection. Labor for access. It is efficient." Jonah heard the real word under efficient. "Monopoly." Ressa held her ground. "This route is under my watch. I can escort her back for safety." The supervisor smiled thinly. "No, she goes to a secure unit. Then she works where she is told." Jonah leaned toward Malky. "Can you run? With this case?" "No," Malky said. Jonah looked at Ressa. "Then we move her." Ressa exhaled once. 2 minutes. She stepped forward and spoke sharply. "Cinder Guard, clear the road. Safety hold. Brasswind front dust surge. No convoy movement." The soldiers hesitated. Dust made rules. And rules were shields. Jonah cut Malky's ties with a small blade and pulled her into the ditch. They moved low under the culvert shadow. Ressa kept the soldiers' attention with her badge and steady voice. Behind them, the supervisor shouted, "Stop, council property." Jonah did not stop. He pushed Malky forward until the road noise thinned. Ressa tossed an oxy pouch into the ditch. "Go," she said. "Red Ditch Road south. Do not return by the gate." Malky ran, awkward but determined, clutching the case. Jonah followed until a service hatch near Mirage Duworks swallowed them into darkness. In the hatch tunnel, Malky pressed her forehead to the cool metal. "You just made yourself an enemy." Jonah wiped dust from his eyes. "I already was." Malky looked at him, breathing hard. "If your water fails, my microbes die. If they die, this place stays a prison. Cade knows that. He wants the key, not the cure." Jonah nodded. "Then we take water back. And we protect the record." By late afternoon, the cold canteen line stretched farther than Jonah had ever seen. People waited with empty jugs and sharp eyes. The priority window still served Cade-stamped tags first. "My child is coughing blood," a woman shouted. A man answered, "Talk to the aliens. They poisoned us." The crowd surged toward the serving door. A guard shoved back. Someone fell. A rock struck the wall. And the sound snapped nerves loose. Jonah scanned faces. 2 men pushed forward together. Coordinated. One carried a small canister with a taped nozzle. The other kept glancing up, like he was checking for a signal. Sayla reached Jonah's side. "They are about to start it," she said. "Get people away from the door." The canister burst with a sharp hiss. A cloud spread, stinging eyes and throats. People coughed and panicked. Someone yelled, "Fire!" The line collapsed into a crush. Cinderguard rushed in with batons. They struck the nearest bodies. Not the ones who started it. Jonah grabbed a woman who was falling and hauled her upright. Sayla pulled another person free and pressed an oxy pouch to their face. Above the line, a drone camera hovered, its lens steady. Jonah saw its stamp light blink. Neutral ledger board recording. Marshal Joran Cade appeared at the far end with a loudspeaker. "Disperse," Cade said. "This is a riot. This is sabotage. Your water is being protected." Jonah's wrist unit vibrated with an alert from Mirage Doworks. "Unauthorized entry. Control gallery breach." Jonah ran. Sayla followed. Irion Voss appeared from a side alley. Eyes wide. "They used the riot as cover," Irion said. "They are inside. They will take the ledger." They reached Mirage Doworks as Cinderguard poured through the main doors. Boots hammered on metal stairs. A clerk slapped new seals onto filter vault, then held a list of approved names like a weapon. Cade stood in the control gallery, calm as if he belonged there. His gaze locked on the Nightwater ledger bolted beside Jonah's console. "Engineer Sutter," Cade said, "emergency audit. Hand over the Nightwater ledger." Jonah stepped between Cade and the console. "You do not have that authority." Cade lifted a stamped order. Drybelt Civil Council. Neutral ledger board oversight. Immediate compliance. Irion rushed to a terminal and tried to open an uplink to the Interline Relief Compact Relay. A warning flashed. Signal blocked. "They jammed it," Irion said. "Even my routing keys are denied." Cade glanced at her. "Unauthorized transmission is information warfare. We are preventing escalation." Sayla looked at the seals on filter vault. "People are drinking contaminated water. You are locking the fix." "We are preventing tampering," Cade said. "Off-world sickness is already here. We must control supply to stop panic." Malky Terran stepped forward with the Blueleaf biome case strapped tight. "You are not controlling supply," she said. "You are controlling who gets to live on land later." Cade's eyes narrowed. "That case belongs in a secure unit." "It belongs with the soil," Malky said. Cinderguard edged closer. Jonah felt the gallery tighten. He heard the condenser fans slow, like the building was holding its breath. Cade pointed at the ledger. "Hand it over, and the cut hours end. Power returns, water flows. Refuse, and you will be removed for public safety." Jonah thought of the hidden copy in the calibration canister. He thought of how little that mattered if Cade owned the visible truth. Then called the copy fake. "You are using thirst as a contract," Jonah said. Cade nodded once. "Contracts are how civilization survives." A soldier grabbed Jonah's shoulder. Jonah did not fight. Fighting would complete the story Cade wanted. Irion looked at Jonah. Sayla held her ground. Malky's hands stayed locked around her case straps. Jonah raised his palms and stepped back. "We move," he said. "We do not die in this room." They retreated into a side maintenance wing, where auxiliary pumps and spare aero mesh parts were stored. Behind them, Cinderguard sealed the control gallery. New stamps appeared on doors like fresh scars. Within an hour, the neutral ledger board broadcast played on public screens near the water ration office. It showed the cold canteen riot and named instigators as outsiders. It praised Marshal Cade for restoring order and announced emergency ration contracts for stability. In the maintenance wing, Jonah listened to the towers outside slow under limited power. The cut hours were no longer an emergency measure. They were policy. At the DQ, people traded labor for tags. They signed for priority. They agreed to patrol. They agreed to report neighbors. Water became debt, and debt became a leash. Jonah sat beside Sayla as she cleaned a field gel kit with rationed water. Irion held her sealed drives close, eyes fixed on the blocked uplink. Malky checked the Blueleaf biome case seal again and again, as if pressure alone could keep hope alive. Siltline Refuge did not fall with gunfire. It fell with signatures, stamps, and a dry cup held out to the wrong window. Dry wind pushed through the service vents like sand through teeth. In the maintenance wing of Mirage Doworks, Jonah Sutter listened to the pumps and the distant crowd noise. The control gallery was sealed behind fresh stamps. The aero mesh condenser towers still breathed, but only under Marshal Joran Cade's permission. Irion Voss knelt on the floor with paper sheets spread in a line. She favored paper now. Screens could be watched. Paper only vanished if someone burned it. Sayla Rune stood beside a work lamp, scrolling clinic notes. Malky Terran sat with the blueleaf biome case pressed to her chest, as if her arms could keep it alive. We do not win by storming a door, Jonah said. We win by taking back flow and record. One piece of evidence gets isolated, Irion said. They twist it, they label it stolen, they call it foreign sabotage. So we do not give them one piece, Jonah said. We give them a timeline. Irion slid pages into order. Valve states, power dips, patrol loops, seal numbers, each page locked into the next. This gate opened during a lock window, Irion said, pointing to a pulse gate manifold chart. It lines up with a power sag. She placed a patrol sheet beside it. And the convoy loop passes the valve yard in the same minutes. She said. Those same days, respiratory cases spike, Sayla said, right after searches, right after masks vanish, right after power drops. She turned the slate so Jonah could see. I can show cough severity by block, Sayla said. The sickest zones are also the most inspected zones. If Cade keeps monopoly, the ground never recovers, Malky said, tracing a soil map scratched on packing foam. Seedwake packets fail, then he owns fear forever. We cannot run full towers, Jonah said, looking at the auxiliary racks. But we can run one honest lane, long enough for people to see it. He opened a panel and exposed a manual feed junction. There is a maintenance bypass that only engineers use, Jonah said. It can send clean output to one distribution line. Cade's office will not expect it. We also need a channel that cannot be corrected fast, Irion said, glancing at the ceiling ducts. Neutral ledger board edits the first thing they receive. Jonah pulled a dull sensor canister from behind a crate. Inside, foam protected the hidden copy module from the Nightwater ledger. I can print totals, Jonah said, hour by hour, post them in the open at the cold canteen. People trust what they can touch. A posted schedule becomes a promise, Sayla said. We release in steps, Irion said, sealing the paper timeline in a plain bag. Medical pattern first, then power cuts, then manifold anomaly, then seals, then totals. Jonah picked up a grease pencil and wrote on a metal panel, water lane. Paper lane, petition lane, 3 tracks, 1 goal. We also need hands, Jonah said, not fighters, couriers, tape and nails, people who can stand beside a board and not flinch. I can ask families who already lost someone, Sayla said. They are not afraid of labels anymore. I can show what stable water does, Malky said, a small tray, a living patch, proof that the future is not a rumor. Jonah stood. He felt the shift in himself. He was still an engineer, but now he had to move humans as carefully as valves. No riots, Jonah said, no footage that helps him, only facts and water. Outside, metallic dust rattled the grills like dry rain. 2 days later, Sayla walked beyond the refuge wall under Captain Ressa Dane's quiet escort. Jonah followed with a small cart of supplies. Keeping his head low, the Drybelt air felt sharp, even through a lungveil mask, and the ground crunched with oxidized grit. Elder Bram Tolk waited near a half-buried shelter dome. His posture carried old anger and older fear. Jonah had heard Bram's name used like a warning in the Dooku. You brought sickness, Bram said. Now we bury our own. Sayla did not argue. She stepped into the dome and knelt beside a boy on a thin mat. The child's cough was wet and deep. Sayla opened an oxy pouch valve with careful pressure and watched the boy's chest rise more evenly. Bram's hands trembled as he held the boy's shoulder. His anger had nowhere to stand. Sayla dipped a small filter strip into the child's drinking cup. The strip darkened fast. This is metal dust in water, Sayla said, not a foreign germ. Cade said the towers were safe. Bram whispered. They can be, Jonah said, if filter vault is opened and cores are replaced. If masks stay on faces. If distribution is not punishment. Why trust you? Bram asked. Because I will stop hiding totals. Jonah said, I will post meter numbers. I will post the schedule. I will let you put your own eyes on the numbers. Irion stepped closer and held out printed pages. These are time stamps. Irion said, power dips, patrol loops, valve states. Ask your own people to read them. Bram bristled at her alien features. Then looked back at the boy breathing with help. Outside the dome, one of Ressa's guards spoke quietly to Jonah. It was the same young woman who had whispered before. Dust scars etched into her helmet. Some of us are done taking masks. She said, we are tired of being used as a club. Then help us be a wall instead. Jonah said, a wall that protects posting and petitions. He opened the cart. A small stack of Lungveil masks and 2 Cleanwell cartridges sat inside. Not enough for a week. Enough to signal intent. Jonah also showed a hand-written schedule sheet. Simple and blunt. Children and elders first, Jonah said, then clinic, then general queue. Same rules every day, posted in public. What do you want from me? Bram asked. A petition, Jonah said, signed by Drybelt locals. Demand permit review. Demand access to filter vault for medical need. Demand neutral ledger board publish raw totals. Paper does not stop rifles. Bram said. It stops licenses. Irion said. Cade lives inside forms. If forms turn, his badge turns. I can deliver it through internal channels. Ressa said at last. Council clerks will see it before it vanishes. Bram's eyes moved from the strip to the schedule sheet. He understood the offer was not glory. It was a routine with no favoritism. I will sign, Bram said, and I will bring others. Not for ideals, for lungs. Jonah felt the alliance form through a child's breath and a shared limit. On the morning the petition moved toward the Drybelt Civil Council office. Cade moved first. Speakers across Silt Line Refuge crackled. Emergency hostage protection order, Cade announced. 3 off-world women are suspected of sabotage. Transfer them for investigation. In exchange, full power and full water return. The crowd reacted before Jonah reached the cold canteen. Anger rose fast. People wanted a simple trade. 3 for thousands. Cade's cinder guard blocked streets and pulled several locals aside as witness holds. A mother screamed when her brother was dragged away. Obedience would be rewarded. Doubt would be fined. Sayla stood beside Jonah in the maintenance corridor. Face unreadable. Irion's fingers tightened around her bag of papers. Malky's eyes went to her case straps. They will hand us over, Sayla said. They will be pushed to. Jonah replied. He is turning thirst into a vote. A water ration office clerk found Jonah. Sweating. Engineer. The due queue is turning. The clerk whispered. They say you chose outsiders over children. Jonah felt the weight of the choice. Sign Cade's agreement and end the cut hours. Or refuse and watch more bodies fall. If you accept, you become his clerk, Irion said. If you refuse loudly, he gets his riot, Ressa said. Can you write the clinic data in plain language? Jonah asked Sayla. Cases by day, mask seizures by day, deaths after power cuts, Sayla said. No adjectives, just counts. Print the ledger totals, Jonah told Irion. Hour by hour, post them. Captain Ressa Dane arrived with a tight jaw. We cut his legitimacy, Jonah said, not his body. His land recovery charter requires stable water quality. Malky said, if he creates contamination, he violates his own future plan. Jonah moved to the auxiliary junction and flipped a hidden breaker. A low hum grew. A single pump line woke, feeding a maintenance bypass into a distribution spur that served the clinic block in the nearest queue lane. Water did not surge. It only began to flow. Steady and modest, but it flowed without Cade's tag window. In the clinic block, a faucet coughed, then ran. Word traveled faster than the loudspeakers. A few people left the shouting crowd and walked toward the steady line. Eyes wide, the queue noise softened into puzzled murmurs. It was not enough water to end fear. But it bought minutes. Minutes were everything. At the cold canteen, Jonah walked to the public meter board without climbing anything. He taped the first printed totals to the board. Sayla taped her clinic table beside it. Irion taped the timeline page that linked power dips to valve movement. Malky placed a shallow tray with damp soil and a few seedwake packets under a clear cover. A small future on display. Is this real? A woman asked, leaning close. These are your hours, Jonah said. Look at the cut times. Look at the seal dates. Look at who lost masks. Cade says you forged it. A man snapped, shoving forward. Elder Bram Tolk stepped from the crowd. Dust on his coat, petition signatures in his hand. I watched my child's water strip turn black. Bram said, that is our dust. And someone locked the fix behind a seal. The neutral ledger board drone hovered above, lens blinking. It captured Bram's face. It captured the posted totals. It captured the signatures of Drybelt locals, in ink that could be checked. Marshal Cade arrived with Cinderguard in a practiced calm. He saw Bram and paused. He saw the seedwake tray and frowned, as if even plants were a threat. This is unauthorized distribution, Cade said. This is public safety disclosure under Council Permit Code, Ressa said, stepping forward with her badge visible. Who authorized it? Cade asked, still smooth. Drybelt Civil Council receives this, Ressa said, raising the petition packet, now logged with a clerk stamp, with medical evidence, operational time stamps, and local signatures. A pale council clerk pushed through the edge of the crowd, holding a slate. The clerk's voice shook. Marshal, your emergency order is paused. The clerk said, permit review requests immediate inspection. Until then, transfers are suspended. Your security charter is restricted to perimeter only. Cade took a half step toward the clerk, then stopped. He could intimidate a person. He could not intimidate a logged file without exposing himself. This is procedural confusion, Cade said. I hold emergency authority. Emergency authority requires an active safety certificate. The clerk said, the certificate is tied to filter vault access logs. The logs are now under audit. Until inspection, your orders are limited. Ressa's guards formed a loose line near the meter board. They did not raise rifles. They simply stood where bodies would have to push through them. People in the due queue watched the exchange like they watched water levels, waiting to see what would move next. No gun fired. No riot erupted. Authority shifted with a single line of process. You would risk the refuge to protect 3, Cade said, loud enough for the queue. I am protecting the refuge from a leash, Jonah replied, and from a future sold to 1 badge. The crowd did not cheer. They leaned toward the meter board and read. They watched the small water lane keep running. Thirst did not vanish, but the story began to slip from Cade's hands. For the first time in days, Cade had to argue with paperwork instead of scarcity. Dust scraped along the walkways. At first light, the aero-mesh condenser towers of Mirage Dewworks caught a thin fog band. And Jonah Sutter watched the capture curve climb with stubborn steadiness. The public meter board at the cold canteen still held yesterday's posted totals. People stood near it without chanting. They read, then looked up at the towers, measuring trust by flow. Jonah met Captain Ressa Dane in a service corridor behind the water ration office. Her guards kept their rifles low and their eyes high. They were still a shield, but no longer a club. We can hold corridors, Ressa said. We cannot win firefights. We are not here for firefights, Jonah replied. We are here to keep water moving, and to keep the record alive. Irion Voss arrived with clear sleeves of printouts. Sayla Rune followed with clinic notes and a crate of lungveil masks. Malky Terran came last with the blueleaf biome case and a covered tray of soil. Jonah spread a map of Siltline Refuge on the floor and marked 4 points. Auxiliary power, zone valves at the valve yard, filter vault access, and the physical trunk that carries the Nightwater ledger feed to the neutral ledger board drone link. Irion tapped the trunk line. They jammed my uplink, but they still export their narrative through this conduit. If we control the conduit, we control what leaves. Sayla laid her slate beside the map. If filter vault opens, we swap silt seal filter cores. The contamination curve drops fast. I can show that in counts, not slogans. Malky's gloved finger traced the dry farms beyond the wall. If Cade keeps monopoly, land restoration dies. Seedwake packets fail. Then he owns fear and calls it order. Jonah nodded once. No storming. No riot footage. Only visible steps. Water first. Proof next. Then water again. They moved while the air was still cold enough to keep crowds slow. Ressa's guards took positions at turns and stairwells with bodies. Not threats. Jonah and a water ration office technician entered the auxiliary generator room and rewired a bypass under council review seals. The first pump spun up with a steady hum. Jonah opened a controlled lane to the clinic block and elder shelters. Then recorded the meter rise on paper. He posted that paper beside the board before anyone could claim it was a rumor. At the valve yard, the technician and Jonah checked the pulsegate manifold access stamps against Irian's timeline. The mismatch was clear. It showed when the manifold had been touched during supposed lock windows. And which patrol loop overlapped those minutes. A Cinder Guard patrol approached the pit edge. Ressa stepped into view and raised the logged permit review packet. Restricted perimeter, she said. No entry until inspection completes. The patrol leader hesitated, then backed away. It was not victory. It was a hinge, and Jonah felt it. On the cold canteen platform, Irian faced the drone lens and the queue at once. She held up the first packet. These are operating stamps, she said. These are cut hours. These are seal numbers. If you doubt me, match them to the board. A man shouted, voice cracked from thirst. You are off-world. You will twist it? Sayla lifted her slate. These are clinic entries by block and day. Masks seized here. Cases spiked here. Deaths rose after cuts. Read the dates. Malky placed the soil tray down and lifted the cover for a breath. A thin green thread showed through the dark surface. These are seedwake packets, Malky said. They only live with stable clean water. Monopoly kills them. That kills tomorrow. Ressa's team distributed Lungveil masks by the posted schedule. Names and blocks written large. No priority window. No tagline. People watched elders receive masks first. And something in the crowd softened into recognition. Marshal Joran Cade arrived with trucks and a loudspeaker. Calm as ever, he looked at the posted packets, the meter board, and the lane that was flowing without his window. This is unauthorized control of critical infrastructure, Cade said. Step away, or you endanger everyone. Jonah walked into view and held up the logged review packet. We are restoring safety under inspection. We are operating in public. Cade pivoted to the crowd. If you follow this, you return to riots. No one surged. The board numbers kept rising in a steady line. Cade went where he always went when force paused. He went to paperwork. At the Drybelt Civil Council office, he demanded reversal. Elder Bram Tolk was there with a bundle of signatures. Dust still on sleeves. The clerk who had stamped the review looked tired. But their hands did not shake. Cade kept his voice controlled. I prevented collapse. I prevented the thirst riots. You know what happens without force. Bram answered with a hoarse steadiness. My grandson's mask was taken in your searches. He coughed until he could not stand. That is not prevention. That is discipline, Cade said. Discipline keeps people alive. It kept your tags alive. Bram said, not our lungs. Outside, noise spiked from the valve yard. A small group loyal to Cade tried to reopen the priority bypass. Ressa's guards held them back with shields in tight formation. No shots fired from the line. Then a single shot cracked from inside the crowd. Panic, not command. The bullet hit a main pipe flange. Metal screamed, and a jet of water burst into air and grit. The pit filled with vapor. People scattered coughing, and the flow lane shuddered. Jonah ran down the steps. This was not staged. The damage was ragged and real, and the pipe would need a full segment replacement that the refuge did not have. Ressa was already there, pushing people back. One of her guards, the young woman who had first spoken against mask seizures, sprinted to the isolation wheel and slipped on wet metal. She caught herself and kept turning with both arms straining. A second shot snapped. She jerked, but she did not let go. The wheel seated. The jet dropped to a hiss. And only then did she collapse. Sayla reached her and pressed a field gel kit to the wound. Her hands moved fast. but the look in her eyes said she knew the limits. "This is too deep," Sayla said. "We cannot undo this here." The guard's breath rattled. She looked at Jonah, then at the pipe, and her mouth formed two words. "Keep flowing." Her eyes went distant before Sayla could answer. By the time Jonah returned to the council office, the cost had spread through the building like smoke. Cade still stood straight, still insisting. "The refuge falls without my charter," he said. "You are creating chaos." Irion stepped forward and handed the clerk the full chain packet. Stamps, time stamps, manifold anomalies, seal logs, and the posted totals with witness notes from Bram's group. The clerk logged the file into the council system with public verification marks and read the clause aloud. Emergency authority is suspended due to documented contamination risk, documented seal manipulation, and documented discriminatory distribution. Cade watched the log finalize as if it were a blade drawn. Ressa entered with her helmet in hand, water streaking dust down the shell. "One of mine is dead," she said. "She died sealing a breach your people provoked." Cade's mouth tightened. "This is what I stopped. Disorder." "You rented it," Jonah said, "then build us in water." The contractor soldiers behind Cade shifted. Without a valid charter, their pay and immunity vanished. One by one, they stepped back, not dramatic, just practical. Cade's power thinned until it was only his voice and his coat. "You will regret this," he said, softer now. Jonah looked at the suspension notice, then out toward the queue. "We already paid." The next day, water still ran, but the schedule tightened. Jonah posted it anyway, because truth was part of the flow now. Some blocks received less, and people cursed, but they cursed the numbers, not each other. Under council supervision, the control gallery seals were removed. Filter vault opened with Sayla present and a clerk reading seal numbers aloud. Jonah supervised the first silt seal filter core swap like surgery. The old core came out heavy and dark, clogged with metallic sludge. Sayla ran a quick test on the new output and watched the particulate count fall. "It is not perfect," she said, "but it is safer." In a quiet maintenance bay, the three off-world women asked Jonah to meet them where the tower hum was low. They had cleaned dust from their faces, but scarcity still sat in their shoulders. Sayla spoke first. "We did not stay because you saved us. We stay because you keep promises in public." Irion set a printed schedule on the table and tapped it once. "You made choices readable. That is rare in war zones." Malky set the blue leaf biome case beside the schedule, then removed the field helmet and translator unit. Jonah heard her real voice for the first time, shaped by fatigue more than machines. "The suit makes everyone into a rumor," Malky said. "I will not live as a rumor." Jonah held his hands together, keeping his tone steady. "You know what it costs to stay. They will keep blaming you." "They already did," Sayla said. "We are still here." Irion's gaze did not flinch. "Our culture does not treat partnership as a reward. It is a duty contract." Sayla nodded. "Voluntary, transparent, shared responsibility." Malky added, "And witnessed. No hidden tags. No private water." Jonah listened until it became practical. Shared ration consequences. Same queue. No priority stamps. The due truce accord. Logged with the council, so no one could weaponize secrecy later. "I accept," Jonah said, "if it remains choice. Every day." "It will," Sayla said. 2 nights later, Malky carried a tray beyond the refuge wall to a dust farm plot that had failed for years. The start of a dust farm truce. Jonah and Sayla set a small drip line from the clean output lane. Irion recorded the planting on paper and in a council log. Malky pressed seedwake packets into damp soil and covered them lightly. "We are not fixing a world," she said. "We are proving it can be fixed." From the ridge, Jonah saw the aero mesh condenser towers catch a thin, stubborn fog. The flow was weak, but it did not stop. Far off beyond the Drybelt, a dull flash pulsed on the horizon. Brasswind front again, restless and unresolved. A yard relay hissed with new interference patterns. A warning without words. Jonah watched the towers keep working. He did not pretend the fight was over. Water ran weak, but it ran, And the record ran with it. In the end, Siltline Refuge did not win with a parade. It did not win with a perfect dawn. It won with a posted schedule. It won with a clean filter core seated by honest hands. It won with a thin line of water that kept moving, even when fear tried to freeze it. Jonah watched the aero mesh condenser towers pull one more breath of fog from the Drybelt. He understood what the Truce Accord really meant. No one owned the flow. No one erased the record. They would rebuild slow and stubborn. One cartridge at a time. One mask at a time. One square of living soil at a time. Brasswind front still flickered on the horizon. Peace was never permanent. It was only maintained.